I call to order the meeting. Welcome to the public hearing of the Bills Committee on the National Anthem Bill. First item, there is one item on the agenda, that is meeting with deputations and administration. There are a total of 144 deputations and individuals attending the public hearing to give their views. There are 6 sessions to the meeting. We will be here from 9 a.m. till 6:30 p.m. and then between 1 and 2 p.m. that will be a lunch break. So that means at 1 p.m. we will adjourn the meeting until 2 p.m. Perhaps the clerk could now invite the deputations and the individuals to join us.
I'm not here to discuss this issue with you. I have no intention to discuss with you. If you wish to speak, please take your seat. We will deal with this matter later. Please do not engage in a direct dialogue. Mr. Zhang, please take your seat and prepare to address the meeting. Mr. Zhang, please zip up your jacket. If you don't zip up your jacket, then I will take it that you're not properly attired and I will ask you to leave. Mr. Zhang, please. stop what you're doing. Please zip up your jacket and take your seat. Otherwise, I will take it as misbehavior on your part. There are no words on this. I'm just taking out my scarf. Can I not do so? Yes, you can. Now, this is not going to cause you embarrassment, right?
Oh.
Fine. Now, if I may remind the representatives of deputations and the individuals that channel 1, channel 0 is the floor, channel 1 is Cantonese, channel 2 English, and channel 3 Putonghua. So that's on your earpiece. And each person would have 3 minutes to speak. There is a timer here. When the 3 minutes is up, there will be beeping sound to remind you that time is up. And if you do not have enough time to speak, then for those with written submissions, you could submit the submissions to our secretariat after the meeting. If I may remind those attending the meeting to give their views, as they give their views, they do not enjoy the protection and exemption under the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance. Similarly, the submissions they submit are not protected by the ordinance. I would also like to remind those attending the meeting that there are various security measures under the note for members of the public attending meetings in conference rooms or observing meetings in public galleries in the Legislative Council complex. The note is included in the letter sent to you by the Secretariat. It is also tabled. And for those members of the public in the public gallery, you may ask the security staff for the note if you wish. And I would also like to explain the arrangement of the public hearing. I would like to make the following points. First, the purpose of the public hearing is for members and government officials to listen to the views of the public. There are 3 parts to each session of the public hearing. For the first part, individuals are invited to give their views. The second part, the government officials are invited to give an overall response to all the views given. Now, the first part and the last part, the third part and the last part is members will have time to ask questions. I must point out that in accordance with the rules of procedure, when members are to ask questions, it's for me to call upon the official or a member of the public to reply. Only then could the official or the member of the public could speak. Between members or between members and officials or public or members of the public, they are not to engage in a direct dialogue, and I will be very strict with that. And also, I noticed that in previous public hearings, individual members may ask to allow the balance of their speaking time for members of the public to speak, and they would decide which member of the public speak. I will not allow this because this is not fair to other members of the public who have not been asked to speak. And I will instead ask the members of a member of public to give the written submission. If a member doesn't use up his speaking time, then he should finish early and let another member ask questions, because this is a session for members to ask questions, and then we could allow more members to ask questions this way. And if I may remind members of the public to note that in accordance with Rule 87 of the Rules of Procedure, if anyone is engaging in misbehavior or appears to be engaging in misbehavior, whether it may be members of the media or the public, the chairman could order them to leave. So to ensure there is orderly proceedings, without no warning, I could remove anyone who do not follow the note to leave. So we will now start with the first session of the hearing. Mr. Lam Chak Ting. Mr. Chairman, I heard just now that members may not give the balance of their speaking time to a designated member of the public to speak. I follow that. What if we ask a particular member of the public to respond or to elaborate on his or her views, that's allowed, is it right? Now, on the speeches made in the first part, you could seek clarification, so it has to be related to what's been said in the first part. Well, maybe that person hasn't finished speaking in the first part. Then can I ask him to finish his speech? No, that won't be allowed. We'll ask them to make written submissions. Well, wouldn't that be too strict? Because I might want to finish hearing what the person has to say. If you wait, we have to wait for the written submission. It may take too long. Now, this is the public hearing. I have no intention to debate with you on that. Now, I know you don't want to debate, but we're just talking reasons. What if he's only halfway done after 3 minutes, and maybe we want him to finish what he says so I could follow what he's trying to say, and that's not even allowed? Well, we can ask them to make written submissions, or you could ask questions to seek clarification. Okay, got it. Thank you. Now, before we start, Secretary, do you wish to make a short speech? Yes, I'd just like to say a few words. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I would like to thank the Bills Committee for staging this public hearing. Now, in the local legislation exercise for the national anthem law, the government has been using various channels to listen to views of the public and members of this council. Now, in March last year, we consulted the Constitutional Affairs panel, and also there were 2 special meetings in April and May last year. We heard the views of 190 deputations and individuals. In the course of drafting of the bill, we met with some political parties and professional bodies. We listened to the views, and in doing our study and formulating the bill. And the bill was received its first and second readings this year, and then the bill is now under scrutiny by the Bills Committee. So today, my colleagues and I are here to listen to the views of the deputations and individuals. We hope that the views would help the early completion of the scrutiny of the bill, and then we could pass the bill as soon as possible, and then in fulfilling our constitutional duty. First session. May I remind you again that the speaking time limit is 3 minutes. First one, Mr. Zhang Pak-Kei. Good morning. The DAB supports passing the national anthem bill as soon as possible. I would like to give our views. First, national anthem is the same as national flag and emblem. It's a sign, a symbol of the country. It has to be respected. So we need to and defend the dignity of the national anthem through legislation. It is not uncommon around the world. Or for example, in Germany, if anyone insults the national anthem, there could be a maximum imprisonment sentence of 3 years. And if there involves a breach of constitutional principles, the maximum imprisonment term is 5 years. So in comparison, the proposed penalty in the bill is relatively relaxed. And there's only a fine of $5,000, $50,000 maximum, or an imprisonment of 3 years. So that's rather relaxed. And also, the prosecution period compared to the mainland is also on the liberal side. Now, on the mainland, there could be a retrospective period for 5 years, but here in Hong Kong, we're only proposing a maximum of 2 years. So, of course, the bill has given regard to the principles of common law and the spirit of the one country and two systems. And for Clause 3, it says under what circumstances the national anthem should be played, and we believe that's reasonable. Now, in the legislature, where there is a swearing in, there should be playing of the national anthem. The legislature is like the executive; they're all part of the government. So already under the current law, members of the council have to swear, take an oath. So if a national anthem is played as well, that goes to enhance the dignity of the occasion. And but if members don't just respect the playing of the national anthem, they should be disqualified. We hope that the national anthem bill will be passed soon, so we could defend the dignity of the country. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Lai Chi-sing. Thank you. I am a Chinese national and a citizen in Hong Kong. I respect the national flag, emblem, and song, and flag, emblem, and anthem, and also that those are for the region. Of course, that is reasonable. Well, there are people who are scaremongering. They say that the legislation would affect Hong Kong's freedom of speech and expression. They are worried that this is brainwashing for youngsters, and that the person who wrote the song had a miserable life. But you will have to be fair. Why didn't you mention that the songwriter Tian Han actually grew up in a musical atmosphere before he wrote the song? The score of the national anthem was very invigorating. It's a very high quality classical music. No one mentioned anyone about Nie Er. We only heard about Tian Han. Well, when we listen to canto pop, we will study about the songwriters and not just those who write the lyrics. You have to appreciate the beauty of the national anthem. You don't really have to necessarily go into the lives of those who wrote the song. Well, it is in Annex 3 of the Basic Law. We have the duty to legislate for it. We can also draw reference from a CFA case relating to the national flag. The court said that it is not absolute when one exercises the freedom of speech and expression. There are responsibilities and obligations. As a result, there are ways to express yourself, but it's within limits. Say, for example, you will have to abide by certain laws and make sure that you don't disrupt law and order when you express yourself. So it is under the concept of public order. I do think that, drawing reference from the national flag law, then this national anthem law is necessary and reasonable. I talk about necessity. I talk about reasonable restrictions. They are constitutional and in line with the basic law, so I support this bill. Thank you. Next is Mr. Goh Chong-kit. Good morning, everyone. I am a member of the Y Elite Association. I come here to speak to you to express my views in support of the bill. In January, in the Parliament of Macau, they have passed the national flag law and the national anthem law. But here in Hong Kong, we are still going through the legislative process. The original intent of the law is to make sure that people will respect the national anthem and to preserve the dignity of the same. We have had sufficient communication and discussion about this topic. The government has been talking to the public. These so-called controversies, prosecution period, the government has sufficiently explained about them, and there is mainstream view saying that people support the national anthem law. I am involved in musical education. Well, we use secondary creations to educate our youngsters. I can tell you boldly that I'm not afraid of prosecution because I'm an adult. I know about limits. I may exercise my freedom, but I will not, say for example, using my parents in a joke. And you don't want your parents to be mocked either. Hong Kong is part of our motherland. If you insult the national anthem, that means you insult your parents. That is intolerable. We are part of our country. We have the duty to safeguard the dignity of the national anthem. We have the duty to make use of the national anthem to learn about the resistance against Chinese aggression as well as our history. Only people who have a guilty conscience will be afraid of a knock on the door in the middle of the night. If you don't want people to know, don't do anything dirty. We are men. We have to be responsible for what we have done. In US, Canada, and European countries, there are laws to protect the national anthem. It's an international practice to have the law protecting the national anthem. I think there are people who oppose for the sake of opposing. I attended a radio show and I heard what the secretary using different examples to illustrate what constitute a contravention of the law. Next, Mr. Hao Wing-chang. Well, we are the Hong Kong Taoist Association. We support local legislation for the national anthem law. Well, the national anthem represents our country. The law will make sure that the national anthem will be respected. In 2017 November, the NPCSC decided to incorporate national anthem law into Annex 3 of the Basic Law. Under Article 18, it will become under Article 18 of the Basic Law, it says that national law will be incorporated into the region by way of local legislation. Legislating for the national anthem law will make sure that the original intent is achieved. People who disrespect the national anthem will be penalized. People don't have to over-worry about the legislation. The bill doesn't restrict people's freedom. It targets people who deliberately challenge the law and insult the national anthem in a disrespectful way. If you don't break the law, you don't have to be worried that you have committed a crime. Those who deliberately insult the national anthem should be spurned. If you use the national anthem in as part of the education, it is not a contravention of the law. But deliberate distortion of the national anthem or singing it and playing it in a disrespectful way is a crime. The national anthem is not a pop song, so it should not be treated without respect. It won't affect our everyday life. We support the playing of the national anthem at the time of oath-taking by legislators, because it shows the importance of one country, two systems, and it shows the solemnity of the occasion. I think if legislators don't respect the national anthem, they should be disqualified. Thank you. Next is Mr. Zhang Qiuyu. Good morning, everyone. I support the speed legislation of the national anthem law. I think that the national anthem represents our country. In November 2017, the NPCSC decided to include the national anthem law as Annex 3 of the Basic Law. And under Article 18, national laws will be should be legislated locally, so that it will become part of our law. We need the national anthem law to show the spirit of the national anthem. There should be speedy legislation to protect the dignity of the national anthem. Say, for example, every school has their own song. Well, those who oppose to the legislation should reflect upon themselves. They should not oppose for the sake of opposing. Thank you, Mr. Zhang. Next, Mr. Lau Man-kip. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lau. I think there is no problem with legislating for the national anthem law. We have the duty to do so. The national anthem law is Annex 3 of the Basic Law. And that's a way to show our respect. In a lot of jurisdictions, a lot of them, Western countries, have national anthem laws. This is a way to make sure that citizens and nationals respect the country. That is only reasonable. It's just like someone coming to your home. You would expect your friend to respect you. I'm sure you have been to primary and secondary school. When I was still a student, teachers told us that each school will have their own songs. When the songs play, everyone in the school will have to remain standing. It shows respect to the school and it's a requirement. And there's a practice put in place over many, many years. Hong Kong is an international city. We have to respect our national anthem. The occasions when it's played is solemn. If you don't respect your own national anthem, it will be an international joke. In primary and secondary schools, students are taught to respect the school song and the songs of other schools. People who oppose to the legislation, shouldn't they reflect upon themselves that it might have a negative impact on our younger generation, that our younger generation will lose respect of others? I think that the government should require schools to teach students to respect not just the school song but the national anthem as well. Students should be taught that respect of these is the basic obligation of a citizen. And I do think that the government should explain to the public under what circumstances that they will break the law. Examples should be given to illustrate the circumstances when the law is broken. When people understand that it is actually not easy to break the law, I'm sure that the general public will support it. Thank you, Mr. Lau. Next, Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. Well, my stance is that the freedom of expression should not be undermined. Well, someone said that there was the national anthem law in Germany. Do you know that in Germany there were laws to prohibit the Communist Party? Do you want to copy that as well? Because, well, at that time, if you were a member of the Communist Party, you would have been arrested. Of course, that law has been changed. People drone on just one thing. The person next to me did not do his homework. The reason for the national anthem is to make sure that in primary and secondary schools there will be promotion of the national anthem. Well, you should have given them more material. And the other one talked about writing a beautiful score. What does that have to do with Tianhan? This is the way you promote the national anthem. That itself is an insult. I asked Ho Chi Minh, and that was how it came by. I asked him in 2007, do you know who Tian Han was? He said no. I asked, do you know how he died? He said no. That itself is an insult. He was a national of the People's Republic of China. Well, he himself, there is also other people like the person who spoke, the woman named Ling. She has green card. She is also a national in Taiwan. Well, I would like to tell you that 300,000 people was massacred in the Nanjing massacre, but China did not say anything. But instead, they were protesting against someone who was arrested in Canada. Well, do you understand that there is the spirit of the national anthem? It is to cultivate the value of a communist party. Do you know what that is? That is when Xi Jinping wants everyone to be obedient. It's kind of like a triad society. Well, you talk about someone's home. I am the owner of this home. I don't want the butler to set rules to tell me when to eat. Pigs should not be the one who decides how humans should live. That should be the end of one-party rule. You should not insult a socialist system, because under the socialist system, people will make decisions. Next, Mr. Fu Wangyan. I think there should be speedy legislation of the national anthem law. I'm just an ordinary citizen, and I know that you need to respect the national anthem. I've been listening, but I don't understand what some people said. Every citizen should respect the national anthem. Please legislate for it as soon as possible. Next is Mr. Han Bing. Good morning. I support the legislation for the national anthem as soon as possible. I'm a Chinese person living in Hong Kong. I've always felt the love and support from our motherland. I feel proud to be Chinese. Legislators pledge allegiance to the basic law, to Hong Kong SAR and the PRC. So when they take the oath, the national anthem should be played to show how solemn the occasion is. Everyone should be taught to sing the national anthem by heart. Thank you, Mr. Han. Next, Ms. Chen Bo-ying. Good morning. I oppose to the legislation of the national anthem. We need to ask ourselves a question. Why is there such a need? I refer to the preamble of the bill. It's talked about respect. There is a lot of emphasis put on it. Well, when I attend an occasion when the national anthem of the US or the UK is played, I would respect them. Well, but if you don't, there shouldn't be any penalty. At most, you would just accuse me of being poorly educated and not civilized. People talk about national anthems being in existence in a lot of countries, but they only know part of the truth. National anthem is a protocol. There are laws about protocol, when it will be played and how it's played. There is no penalty. How come that? Well, that's why there was an occasion when an American football player just knelt on one knee when the national anthem was played, and he was not penalized. You ask us to respect it, but they shouldn't come with a penalty. And in point 3 of the preamble, is talked about, apart from respect, it is to also promote a sense of belonging. Well, I think you have missed one thing. In the national anthem, there is one thing, the core value of a socialist system. But that has been deleted because socialist system is not practiced here. But socialist system is the national policy in China. In the 19th plenary report, it says that socialist system value is, it is to cultivate and live by, we should cultivate and live by the core socialist value. It also talks about the leading philosophy of Marxist and the socialist system as well as patriotism. So there are 4 elements. So you have to be patriotic. And that is one element. In the preamble, this most important point is missing, conspicuously missing. You just cross out socialist values and instead you replace it with to promote patriotism. Don't forget that it's party paper that's talk about socialist values. When the national anthem is played, if we ask for universal suffrage, if we ask for release of political prisoners, isn't it a way to show our patriotism?
Your time is up, Ms. Chen. Next, Mr. Lau Ai. Thank you, Chairman. I have every support for the speedy passage of the national bill because this is the symbol of the country and it represents the dignity of the country and should be respected. To legislate is to safeguard the dignity and faith of Chinese nationals, and it also shows a recognition or identity to the country. If you look all over the world, including Western countries, disrespectful behavior towards the national anthem is unacceptable. And in other countries, they have penalties, and it's not rare to see a similar law in other countries. The purpose of the bill is not to incriminate people, but to educate people to respect the dignity of the national anthem in the country, and we can nurture our future generation to understand the spirit and history of the national anthem. The point is not about punishment and not to control thoughts and freedom. Rather, we want to defend the dignity of the national law, and this is universal value. In other countries, they have similar laws, and in Hong Kong, we have seen disrespectful acts against the national anthem and challenging one country, two systems and our bottom line. And this has caused a great dissentiment among Chinese nationals, and a small group of people may boo our national anthem when it's played using the excuse of freedom of expression. It is natural for us to respect the national anthem, and this has caused Hong Kong a disgrace in the international community. We should safeguard the dignity of our country, and it is necessary for the bill to be enacted in Hong Kong. As Mrs. Carrie Lam, the C, said, so long as you respect the national anthem, you don't have to worry about the impact of the bill. And if you deliberately boo the national anthem when it is played and you turn your back to the national flag, you are deliberately flouting the law. Now, we have the bill is no different from the ordinances to protect the national flag and also the emblem. This bill will not cause any disruption to our daily lives. The national anthem, the national flag and emblem ordinance has been implemented for a long time, and we have not seen anything wrong with it. So whether we are defending the dignity of the country or education, the future generation, the bill should be enacted. So the bill is very significant. All in all, the national anthem bill will not disrupt our daily lives. It can ensure that we respect the dignity of the national anthem. And I think the ulterior motive of but those who oppose the bill is known to all. Ms. Choi Ho-yi. I'm a social worker. I oppose the proposed legislation because it is too crude. And in particular, when you are on an occasion when the national anthem is played, if you have not stood solemnly, you would be prosecuted and you'll be fined and also imprisonment for up to 3 years. This is curtailment of our freedom of expression. It has also distorted our basic understanding of laws in Hong Kong. Common law is practiced in Hong Kong. The purpose is to protect the dignity, safety of lives and properties in Hong Kong, and that's all. When the court trials cases involving cases of concern to the public, the judge would say that the ruling is objective. And why do we talk about respect and such carrying such with terms with so many emotional elements involved? You may say that this is just about teaching people to sing the national law. In fact, the purpose is to promote patriotism. This is rather embarrassing. Well, when schools teach you to love your families and friends, well, if you cannot do it 1 year, you can continue to do so. But once the law is enacted, it's different. For those who have taken videotape, is not wrong. It's just that people who have been videotaped would be pursued. Now, for a teenager, learning to sing the national anthem, if he doesn't sit properly and learn it, rather he is chatting with his friends or walking around, and if it is videotaped and uploaded to the internet, will the police arrest him for such behavior? Because even if you're a student and you breach the law in school, you can be pursued by the police. So this is a bill with penalty provisions. So if a school child breaches the law in his school, will the police take action against him? This very important point is missing in the bill. So there is no question of supporting the bill or not, because this crucial point is not included. Now, the argument that if you have, because of an omission, because you have not stood up when the anthem is being played, well, there is a big problem with the concept of the law, and it's also against the spirit of common law. For instance, singing the national anthem to display your patriotism, and our feelings towards a certain object is used to determine whether you have breached the law is unusual. Thank you. Ms. Siu Wai-chong. Good morning. The government has clearly listed out the important points of the bill. And I'd like to recap some of the important issues and the basic law, and then we can judge whether local legislation should be enacted. First, occasions when the national anthem should be played, and all participants are required to stand solemnly and to be respectful. I think this is normal behavior expected of all adults. Well, when the national anthem of another country is being played, even though you don't know how to sing it, you should display respect and stand solemnly. Even I myself know how to do it. And we should teach our students how to sing the national anthem and understand its history. As we all know, the national anthem is the symbol of a country. To teach a Chinese national to sing the national anthem is not controversial at all. And when our children has grown up, if they have the opportunity to respect Hong Kong or China in international events or competitions, the national anthem will be played. So they should be taught to sing the national anthem. It is a must when they are in an international competition. If they don't know how to sing the Chinese national anthem when it's being played, this is shameful. The licensed media will have to play an API carrying the national anthem. In fact, for all TV stations, before they broadcast the evening news, they will play an API where the national anthem is featured. the national anthem is really strengthening. Like the first lyric of the anthem, the lyric can encourage us to be determined, to be able to persevere, and it can encourage our young people to have the courage to overcome difficulties. This is a positive encouragement. It is not contentious at all. Lastly, to prevent deliberate distortion and altering of the lyrics and score of the national anthem. As we all know, the national anthem represents the country. To legislate to protect the national anthem is tantamount to protecting the country. I'm sure any deliberate act to insult the national anthem and the country should be punished. Zhong Weizheng, as a citizen of Hong Kong, support the national anthem bill so that the law enforcers will have a law to abide by when they enforce the provisions. Thank you. Mr. Nga Jun. The national anthem is a symbol of the country. We should always respect the national anthem, even that of another country. Everyone should be taught to how to sing the national anthem and to respect it. But of course, as a member of the public, I have some reservations, and let me tell you why. The standards of penalty are not too clear. For instance, if people alter it, you say that it is against the law, and people are required to stand solemnly, and if they don't do so, is it a crime? And whether the bill should have an retrospective effect. For instance, there were occasions when football match watchers booed the national anthem. Should they be punished with retrospective effect? And for a short video footage that insulted the national anthem, would the people be punished now? And will there be different levels of fines? For instance, what if it is an ordinary member of the public deliberately insulting the national anthem, and also ordinary member of the public inadvertently sharing footage that insults the national anthem? I'd like to know whether there will be different levels of penalty meted out to these two groups of people. Mr. Zhang Kin-seng. Mrs. Regina Ip. And Miss Sari Lee, who looked so pretty in kimono. Now, love is about mutual respect. If I tell you I love you, will you say that I'm crazy? And long hair, just now talked about the 81st anniversary of the Nanjing massacre, and two of us from Hong Kong was in Beijing burning the plaque of war criminal. Did somebody go to help him? And just earlier this month, Mr. Ronnie Wong passed away when he attended a meeting in Beijing. The real patriots, Ms. Maria Tam, urged him to run to Hong Kong to be treated. Now, I'm talking about patriotism. Please don't interrupt me. Ms. Eunice Young has recently given birth. Would you feed her baby with Mengniu baby formula? Of course not. If you suddenly go home and tell your wife, I love you, what would your wife said? Well, have you been cheating on me last night? And if the wife tells her husband every day, I love you, then the husband would really have to worry. Now, we have to understand what is love. It's about mutual respect. We talk about the national anthem. Yes, I'm talking about the national anthem. It's been more than 60 years since the founding of the PLC. Nowadays, they still have to ask people to love the country. Isn't a failure on the part of the country? Hasn't the country failed? It's been more than 60 years since the founding of the country, and people are still asked to love the country. Patriotism is confined to a certain group of people. For instance, only officials and designated people can only commemorate some important events, and you call that patriotism? Patriotism is not a matter of speech. You have to show mutual respect. Do you really love your country? What you love is power. You are all in love with power. You love the CCP. You do not love the people. Well, you talked about love every day. It is really worrying. It is fake. Please switch off his microphone. Mr. Lee Kwok Pong. Good morning. I'm Lee Kwok Pong. First, I support the National Anthem Bill because the NPC has passed that the National Anthem law be included into Annex 3 of the Basic Law. To legislate is a constitutional duty. In the past, there were occasions when there was insult to the national anthem in some sports events, for example. We have the National Anthem law to ensure that people respect the national anthem, and the focus is on education. As said by some speakers, the penalties proposed here are much lighter than what they are in other countries, and some people say that it is difficult to enforce the national law, a national anthem bill, and therefore it should not be enacted. I think this argument doesn't hold water. If this is really the case, then we shouldn't have other pieces of legislation at all. And some say that the bill is not yet, or this atmosphere is not ripe yet. Then we should have more discussion and more public debate. Thank you. Ms. Zhang Chek-yi. Thank you. The National Anthem law is now included in Annex 3 of the Basic Law, and the government has the constitutional duty to enact the National Anthem bill. We have gone through a long period of public consultation, and we have finally reached the last stage of legislation. The Liberal Party supports the National Anthem bill. It's just like the national flag and emblem. It is a symbol of the country. We should respect the national anthem, the flag and emblem. And it is a civic duty of all citizens in Hong Kong. The national flag and emblem ordinance has been implemented in Hong Kong for a long time, and this bill is similar in nature to the said ordinance, and therefore there is nothing to worry about it. And people are deliberately sending out false messages. They say that the bill would suppress freedom of expression and be used as a means to persecute dissidents. We find this regrettable, and they are totally unfounded. The freedom of speech is limited in some way. We should not use it to undermine the dignity of the country. Many extremists have on different occasions, such as in a football match, displayed behavior that insult the national anthem, and this has also tarnished the international image of Hong Kong. Given the constitutional order in Hong Kong, it is important that we uphold one country, two systems, and we should defend the territorial integrity of the country. The national flag and emblem are symbols of the country, and we should ensure that the national and SAR emblems will not be insulted. We should respect the national anthem as well. LP supports that the national anthem should be taught in primary and secondary schools. Hong Kong is part of the PRC, and the national anthem should be played on occasions in schools. This is natural. We can enhance the understanding of our generation of the country and help them to nurture an identity to the country. I'm of the view that the Education Bureau should set up basic requirements for schools to teach the national anthem. There should be more communication so that teachers can have a better understanding of issues related to the country so that students can be given appropriate education. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So that's the end of this session. Can I now invite the Secretary for Constitution and Mainland Affairs, Mr. Patrick Nip, to give an overall response? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank the 17 representatives for coming here to give their views on the National Anthem Bill. Our IC views representing two schools of ideas. But I would like to focus on a few points in response. First, the National Anthem Law is a national law. It's included in Annex 3 of the Basic Law by the NPC Standing Committee. So therefore, the SL government has the constitutional duty to implement the national law, Anthem Law in Hong Kong through local legislation. Now, we could have different approaches, but because we bear in mind that in Hong Kong we have a different legal system, that's why we have chosen to implement the National Anthem Law through a piece of local legislation. That's the first point. And the second point, the legislative principles of local legislation are made clear. That is, it must reflect the intent and the legislative intent and purpose of the National Anthem Law, that is to ensure the dignity of the national anthem and to make sure people respect the national anthem. But at the same time, we have to have regard to the local legal system and principles and our circumstances. And that's why in drafting the National Anthem Bill, you can see we have actually taken into account the 2 points I mentioned earlier. Third point, this National Anthem Bill is not a lengthy one, so it won't take too long to read the whole bill. But there are 2 key points in the bill. First of all, the National Anthem is specified to be a symbol and sign of the country. So there are some guiding clauses to remind the public to respect the national anthem. So when the national anthem is played or sung, there are certain protocols to observe, and that's to show respect to the national anthem. And I believe the big majority of the public would be able to do that. But then it doesn't mean that there will be an automatic penalty. There are specific requirements and thresholds for invoking penalties. So for deliberate insult of the national law openly, national anthem openly, we need to prohibit that. That's why there's need for the penalty clauses. So you can see in the bill there are guiding provisions to encourage the public to respect the national anthem, but at the same time we've also stipulated penalties. So that is inappropriate use of the national anthem would lead to a penalty, and also deliberate and open insult of the national anthem would also lead to a penalty. So there are standards for the burden of proof and so on. And this is spelled out rather clearly in the bill and in our legal system. Some raised some fundamental issues. Let me explain. Now, at the meetings of the Bills Committee and at other previous occasions, we've had a detailed discussion of such issues, so I'm not going to go into details, but I'm sure if members or others can have further questions, we will be happy to answer them. Okay, it's now time for members to ask questions. Can I have an indication, please, because I need to know how much time to allocate for each of you. The members of the public for the next session are waiting, so we don't want to delay them unduly. So if you wish to speak, please give an indication. 4 members have indicated they wish to speak, so I'll draw the line here.
First one, Mr. Ray Chen. Second, Mr. Ted Hui, Mr. Tony Jie, and then Dr. Fernando Zhang, 4 of you. So I'll draw the line here because I don't want the deputation for the next session to wait too long. 3 minutes each for each of you, but I will be rather strict with the time limit. 3 minutes for questions and answers. So, Mr. Ray Chen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank a total of 144 deputations and individuals for coming to give their views today. But having heard the views of most of them, just to state their position, so I don't really need to use up my 3 minutes. We're now in the Bills Committee stage. Of course, it's fine for people to state their position, but it doesn't really help our scrutiny of the bill. Now, some expressed their concerns about the bill, the provisions, and some have also pointed out ambiguities in some of the provisions. And I would like to thank these views because they will really help us at the Bills Committee stage. And it's not really a matter of the early passage of the bill, because if there's to be early passage, there's no need for this Bills Committee to do any work. Now, I think for those who spoke on the provisions, that Mr. Hao of Hong Kong Towers Association said that the secondary creation will not be affected. Perhaps some in the community do think so. My understanding is if it's secondary creation, we'll have to change the lyrics or the score or the key or whatever. So would that be affected? We really don't know, because in the bill it covers both intent and act. So yeah, there has to be an intent to insult the national anthem, and then someone then takes a series of actions or whatever. But then, you know, if we're just talking about the acts themselves, would that be a criminal offense? I think the government has to explain to the public clearly. And then some said that some expressed support for the national anthem bill, and they said the government should quote more examples on what constitutes an offense and what doesn't. But even last time at the Bills Committee meeting, I mentioned specific cases. There were 2 cases on the mainland. Is that improper use of the national anthem, or is it insult of the national anthem in relation to those 2 cases? But the government wasn't able to answer me. I hope that on Monday, when we have a next meeting, there will be a reply from the government. Now, in some cases, it's clear whether an act is an insult of the base national anthem, but sometimes it's not. You can't say you leave it to the judiciary, because you're the law enforcement agencies. Yes, I agree. For those who support or oppose the bill, they don't have a full understanding of the bill. But anyway, let's not talk about these provisions now. We won't have time. We can deal with it on Monday. Quick response, please, Mr. Nip. As Mr. Ray Chen pointed out, in some cases they are clear-cut, but in other cases we really have to look at the circumstances. So that's why there are many elements listed out in the bill in relation to the penalty. Mr. Ted Hui. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Many of the deputations made a point. That is, when we... Now, is it obligatory, or is it to be taken for granted that everyone loves the country? And must we all love the country? They raise this question, and many in the community do think so. So the question is, if you want me to love the country, you want me to respect the country, but does the country actually respect the people? Now, the government wants to criminalize acts that are not patriotic. That, in other words, you want to use piece of legislation to promote patriotism. So if you don't love the country, then I'll put you in jail. Is that appropriate? And I asked before, is that, you mean if there's disrespect, then there's a penalty? Can you please let me finish? I just want to make it clear, that's all. So you're using a piece of law and criminal offenses to promote patriotism. Is that appropriate? Now, if you look at most other criminal, criminal offences in Hong Kong is about endangering the public and or lives and properties and so on. But here, in this case, if people boo the national anthem or they don't show, they don't respect the country or so on, should that also be made criminal? Now, national anthem law says that we have to promote the patriotism. I can't see there is now in our current laws and regulations that would include something so vague, and then the onus is then put on the public. I don't see any such piece of legislation. No, I don't see that's the case. You know, how come with the national anthem bill you have to do so? Secretary. Well, Mr. Hui mentioned 2 points. First one about patriotism. Let's come back to this bill. In this bill, first we're talking about respect for the national anthem. And I'm sure most people would think is only right. And the second point is about a criminal offense. Here we're talking about deliberately and openly insulting the national anthem, and I believe most people would think such behavior is unacceptable. That's why there is this requirement in relation to the criminal offense, so please don't confuse the two issues. Well, I think we all need to study carefully what the penalty clauses are. Next, Mr. Tony Jie. Please turn on the microphone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank the deputations and individuals for coming here to give their views. Now, there's some written submission. The individual claims to be a local teacher. Now, it's said that if a teacher, say, leads some students on a tour or something, and then students just being playful, and they do something that insult the national anthem, there should be exemption for them from prosecution. Instead, the school should deal with the students. Yes, I agree. If students act inappropriately just because they think it's a game, I don't believe the police will actually go and arrest them. So can I ask the Secretary what would be done in such a case? Would the Education Bureau issue clear guidelines? So when schools and teachers deal with such cases, they know exactly what to do. Now, most attending the session express support for the national anthem bill because we need to respect the national anthem is only right. And so can I have a response from the Secretary? Secretary, thank you, Mr. Zhe, for your questions. Firstly, in the bill, the offence of insulting the national anthem is construed this way. That is, it has to be done openly and deliberately, and there has to be an intent to insult the national anthem. So there are these few elements in the act for an act to be criminal. And of course, the law enforcement agencies will have to collect evidence, and these evidence will be produced to the court for consideration. So there are certain thresholds to be met. That's the first point. Second point, in schools, students may be just playing a game or whatever. Now, of course, if it's in the school setting, it's mostly about guidance to teachers, to students. So we leave it to the professionals to deal with such a situation. And I believe school principals and teachers will be able to guide their students properly. And then on the criminal code, well, certain thresholds have to be met. And I've talked to people in the education sector. the focus is on educating and guiding students, and we will leave it to teachers as professionals to deal with circumstances in a school. Next, Dr. Fernando Zhang. In the hearing this morning, we heard someone who started singing the national anthem while giving his view. He sang a sentence or two, and then I saw you, as the chairman, try to stop him. Now, I believe this person supports the national anthem. But then, on this occasion, he started singing the national anthem. Now, Part 2, Clause 4 of the bill says that when someone sings the national anthem, he has to stand solemnly and he has to depart himself with dignity. Now, I believe he did not mean to insult the national anthem deliberately, but there's a chance that he may have committed an offense under the bill. So, could such an act be criminal offense under the bill? And then for Clause 6, there's an offense of misuse of national anthem. Clause 6, bracket 5, says that the Chief Executive and Council may, by notice published in the Gazette, prescribe an occasion, place, or purpose for the purposes of using the national anthem. Now, so when someone speaks at the public hearing of the Legislative Council, I do not believe using the national anthem here is an appropriate occasion. So would it be an offense then under the bill? Secretary. Thank you, Dr. Zhang, for your questions. Now, first, Part 1, Clause 4. Part 2, Clause 4, that is the standard for playing and singing, or the etiquette for playing and singing. That is for a person playing or singing the national anthem, the etiquette is that they must stand solemnly and depart themselves with dignity. So here we're talking about an occasion when the national anthem is being played and sung. That's the etiquette to be followed. The spirit is to respect the national anthem. That's the first point. The second point, say in a meeting, when someone is giving his views and then he sings the national anthem, that's in the process of him giving his views. And then we have to see under Clause 7 whether this constitutes an deliberate and public act to insult the and also an intentional act to insult the national anthem. And the third point, Clause 6 of the bill, misuse of national anthem. As stated here, certain occasions are not suitable. So so we have to go through the procedure if we that is to go through, published by Gazette if we want to add more occasions. So as to what the etiquette is, what needs to be done and what cannot be done, I think within this council, I think it's for the council to deal with that. Thank you. So that's the end of session 1. We would like to thank all attending today. Thank you very much. So we will now prepare for the second session. Members, please wait for a moment.